Big time. My style is big time influenced by animation because, you know, growing up like in high school and stuff, you know, you start, you know, you get the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book, and you start learning. There's all these John Byrne drawings and all these other things, and you kind of learn like the basics of how they break down the human anatomy.
Welcome back to Inspired Ink, the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have creator Dan Mendoza joining us. We talk about how animation helped influence his style, Dan's journey on creating a successful imprint, Still Ill Comics, and the vital role that we all play when meeting anyone who supports our work. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Ink. Dude, what a fun, like, unique thing that you ended up doing with Zombie Tramp. How'd you get involved with CWS, like, and choosing them over everything?
It's just because I moved to Michigan, you know.
Oh, cool.
I moved to Michigan, and then the printers I was using before, like in Arizona, it just got really costly as far as shipping.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just looking for local printers. Then it was just like, I saw the Comix Wellspring. I'm like, well, where are they? You know, because I saw that it was Michigan, and it was like 45 minutes away.
Oh, that's sick.
So I'm like, I could just go pick up books. So I gave them a shot, and yeah, then we just kept printing together and stuff. And I was like saving like $5,000 a Kickstarter and shipping. So.
Oh, wow. Holy crap. Damn it. So you've been like crowdfunding your stuff for quite a while then, I assume, at that point.
Yeah, I've been doing crowdfunding for about 8 years. And yeah, like the other printers that I do use them sometimes, the ones in Arizona, and they're really cool. And like and Comix Wellspring was kind of like new to everything. Mm-hmm. So there was a big learning curve because they had said that they have never dealt with someone like me, like like on such a grand scale of orders and stuff like that. And so like, you know, it started where I just order the books online and I can't talk to a human. And then it gradually went like, as I keep picking up bigger orders and bigger orders where the owners were outside waiting for me to show up so they can introduce themselves. And then everything got cool where I could actually talk to people and all of those stuff and not have to just do a website. And they were really friendly and awesome. And then it became like, just because they were new, I was really demanding about the quality of the books. So I would bring back books all the time, and I would show them things that I'm looking for, like as far as how you score the spine and why there were spine breaks and all these other things. And they just kept improving their game, man. Like every single time I brought stuff back, they would figure out how to make it better and stuff. And I think they have a really good quality product now. So that's cool. So.
Oh, that's sick. That's super rad to hear, honestly. How cool. I've only been making comics for about a year now. I've been trying to make comics for years. And then like I put out my first book last year, and just getting involved with these guys and all the opportunities they've opened up for me in the last year has been mind blowing. So it's cool hearing. I always love hearing the good feedback. You know what I mean? It's super rad to like balance that out.
They're really good people, and now they've done a switch now where like they move locations.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, that's a little bit farther, but you know, they're still working with me on stuff, so that's great. So.
Yeah, that's where I kind of came into play too. The whole switch up is where they were able to bring me onto the team, and from just doing the podcast, I'm doing their marketing. I'm their marketing manager now, and I get to do all this cool stuff. I became full-time Comix like over the past like 2 weeks, and it's just awesome. Like total dream come true. You know, yeah, it's super
awesome. Rad. Yeah, I remember quitting my day job, man, and that was stressful because I just was working more and more and more, and then I'm just like, I can't do this day job anymore, and I had to make a decision, you know, what to do, and I put in my resignation and I abandoned my 401k and all that stuff, man, and yeah, it was that first year was stressful because I'm just like, what if what if no one cares about my stuff anymore? But that was, that was like, man, that was probably like 14 years ago or something like that. So 13 years ago. So I think I'm still doing okay.
So where did all this start? Like, like I know you from Zombie Tramp, and that's where I discovered like your stuff. And that was, maybe 2017, 2018, 2019, not 2019, probably 2017, 2018 is probably when I first met you. Yeah. And 14 years back, like how have you been working on Zombie Tramp? What's your history that built you
Zombie
into
Tramp's
this?
been around since 2009. I went to art school for animation and stuff, and then pretty quickly after I graduated, I realized that I don't work well with others. so that animation studio life wasn't for me. So I went and got a day job, and then and just was doing art on the side, and I was just like, what, I gotta do something with this art, and I've always just loved comic books, and I hadn't read anything in a while, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna go to a comic book store, and I'm just looking around, and I'm just like, I don't really like anything anymore. I think I was done with superheroes and all that, so I was just like, well, I really want to do something with my art career, so why don't I make like a portfolio piece and send it to all these different publishers, So I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, I got to have fun doing it. So I just like, I'm just going to make a comic book of things that I like. So like horror movies and grindhouse, like 70s exploitation movies and things like that. And like, cute, sexy girls and stuff like that. And so I started developing Zombie Tramp, and I was just drawing this cute zombie girl. And I was like, well, if it's going to have a grindhouse feel, it has to have a stupid name. So I was like, I'll call it Zombie Tramp. So
amazing.
So I did one issue with the intent just to give it to studios and just companies to try to get work, and then I took it to San Diego Comic-Con of all places, because a guy I knew had an extra badge. He's like, yeah, just sit at my table and print some books. So I printed like 80 copies and I sold them like in like 2 days.
Sick.
Yeah, and I was like, oh shit. So I made issue 2, and then I made issue 3, and then we made a trade, and then we put it through Diamond Catalog, and then once I was in the middle of making volume 2, I got picked up by a small publisher, and then we started getting the books on the shelves, and it just kept going on, and it just kept building and building and building and stuff, and then it came to the point where I kind of missed just doing things on my own. So I was just like, I quit. Right. So I quit, and I was just like, I want to see if my fans like me or they just like Zombie Tramp. So I made another character. I made another character called Sad Girl Psycho Baby, and it was a post-apocalyptic genre and it was, I grew up in Los Angeles, so it had a Chicano vibe, and the main character, she's Chicana, and there's lowrider cars and stuff, but it's like still like a Mad Max universe, So I made that as a Kickstarter, and it did amazing, and I was just like, wow. So I was like, that's cool. So then after that, that's when Still Ill Comics was born, my imprint, and then it turned out there was things going on with the publisher that owned Zombie Tramp, and then I ended up having to do like a legal battle with them, and then to get the rights back. So once I got the rights back, things just kept blowing up even more. So what we did was while we were doing our legal battle, we started developing more characters. So we made the sidekick of Sad Girl Psycho Baby was this cute unicorn girl called Sugar Pop. And so like, let's give her own origin series. And that became like the highest grossing character before we got Zombie Tramp back. And then my wife, she had her own character that she wanted to develop, and it was called Cannibal Kitty. So I started drawing it, she started writing it, and that became another character. And all these characters, all the money that these characters made were used to fund to pay for the lawyers to get Zombie Tramp back.
That's amazing.
So it worked really well, and now we got this whole big universe, man, of like 5 yeah, like 5 main leading ladies and all these different titles, man. It's crazy.
Dude, that's so cool. I mean, there's so much fun stuff to unpack there too. I mean, and not only are you doing like a fun female line, which is like very unknown at this point for any type of creator, to be honest. I don't really come across anyone who focuses on a pure female lane practically. And the aesthetic behind it. And just going by your aesthetic, like, I very much vibe with a lot. You got a Dead Kennedys tattoo. I think I see
Yeah.
a Black Flag tattoo. There's a lot of punk rock stuff going on there.
Yeah,
Like all hits like to home. I'm wearing a Misfit shirt at the moment as we're hanging out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're Metallica shirt. We're all on the same vibe with that.
Nice.
It's the aesthetic that like really stood out, that style. And kind of hearing that you come from like almost going into like that animation realm, it totally makes sense. Like, just do you feel like designing characters for animation and that direction just differs so much from how kind of comic book character development is, and that's why your style kind of differentiates so much?
Yeah, it's big time. My style is big time influenced by animation because growing up like in high school and stuff, you start, you get the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book, and you start learning there's all these John Byrne drawings and all these other things, and you kind of learn like the basics of how they break down the human anatomy and stuff like that, and you kind of start learning that. And then I think my freshman year, I'm dating myself. This is like 1988, of high school. One of my friends who was half Japanese, he came back from visiting his grandma in Japan, and I'm just like, dude, you got to check out this VHS tape I have. It's a pilot for an X-Men cartoon that never got picked up, and it was the animation studios that did G.I. Joe at the time. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And then he was just like, he pulls out a VHS tape. He goes, no, you got to watch this. And he puts it in, and it was Akira. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, dude. And then after that, I found an anime called Fist of the North Star. And then that was it, man. I was just like, this is all I care about now is just anime. So I started really diving into Japanese manga, comic books, and I started liking that stuff better, and I started liking the way they do anatomy better, and the way they do their face expressions better, but I was still going back and forth because I really like Jim Lee and Will Spertaccio and the whole 90s era, because look at my comics, it's just 90s bad girl stuff, man. And I'm just trying to, I just want to keep that stuff alive. That's what a lot of all my fans are about my age, because they're 90s collectors, man, and they just love that stuff. But yeah, I went to animation school, and I started to just be majorly influenced by Disney animators and things like that. And I started to learn some of the names of these animators and their line of work, and we would have access to all their character designs and model sheets that they worked on cartoons and stuff. So I started learning off of the face expressions and all that. So my style kind of meshed with Disney and anime together. So and when I was at school, it was kind of like they basically teach you to draw really, really fast. So that helped a lot too. When I first started making my own comic book, because it was, I had a day job and all that stuff, and I'd work like 10-hour days and come home and work on comic books. And originally Zombie Champ was just black, gray, and red. That's the only color there was, and because that's all I had time for. And
that makes sense.
And you know what I mean? And I try to just develop my style just to be really simple, because I only have time to draw something fast. So, and that just became my style after a while. So I've slowed down a lot as I got older. But I used to, when the series Dollface came out, that I co-created at Action Lab Comics, I was drawing that book as well as writing it and writing issues of Zombie Tramp and things like that. And but I was at the point where I could draw a book in 10 days.
Dang.
And then I would just, you know what I mean? And I would write a script. I'd write a script in 1 to 2 days and draw a book in 10 days, and then work on covers for 5 days. So I was just a machine and stuff. But now just, oh no, I'm really slow now.
I mean, you've done the work, you know what I mean? Like you put the time in for sure. Dude, that's crazy. That's like that's like Kirby level kind of like push out at that point. You know what I mean? That's
It was
super
just,
insane.
I was like a human sweatshop, man.
And like, is this all like, survival drive? Is it just like I need to get this done because this has to be done? I have no other option.
Yeah,
Or is it like,
basically.
all right.
I kind of, I just came from a background where, if I don't work, I don't eat. So that's my drive was to pay the bills all the
Yep.
time, man. So the more I can get done, the more I can make, and I can pay my bills and eat and live and all that. So it just, yeah, I grew up with nothing to fall back on but myself. So that's just how I just got that way, and it helps to have a highly functioning anxiety problems.
I relate too much to all of that right there. Yeah, totally understand.
Yeah, my anxiety doesn't let me do nothing. I gotta constantly work on something. So,
Yeah, I feel you. And it's something I get what you mean there because, what I have to do and what, I was doing full time, job on top of doing the publishing and my comics and doing the podcast. And so it was just a constant grind for a long time. And even, I've able to drop some stuff off or at least turn some down for sure. But it's, I've got to be doing that. I feel you too much on that. Like if I'm not, working on something or getting something done, it's time wasted in any department pretty much. And it's hard to, you got to feel that satisfaction of like completing things and wanting to know that things are taken care of and you can move on and progress and it's something positive, not like a burnout, extensive, hopefully, but it's hard. It's a very fine line not to go from burnout to just comfortably doing stuff. And how close have you been on that burnout phase with all this work you're pushing out?
I would just work till I burn out. Like I that's how I used to do things. I just work and work and work, and then I never know when I'm burning out. But then I'll sit down and I got nothing, man. So like I'll go to sleep, I'll go back to sleep, or I'll play video games for a couple days. You know what I mean? Or just go outside. Is I found is pretty good. But yeah, now it's like being married and have a teenage daughter and all that stuff. It's kind of like I kind of only work 4 days, and then I take 1 day off, and then I do 2 half days, and and I try. It's like a new thing for me where I try to make 1 day where I go outside and I go somewhere and I appreciate where I'm at and what I'm doing and stuff like that, and try not to worry about work. So
Oh yeah, yeah. And honestly, like, when things like that happen in life, it kind of forces you to stop and slow down at a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like the significant other, the child, like it really does pull you away from like what you're, kind of wanting to do and, make art and focus on your craft when you're just like, I actually do have life stuff I need also shift attention towards. And again, another fine line to like balance between the two of like how to balance that and efficiently, parent both, because each one of your creations is another child basically that's coming to life for you and you're putting it out there. And so like with this line that you've been developing over the years, what made you make the decision to turn it into an imprint? Like, did you just know you were that self-sufficient and it was going to blossom into that, or is it the freedom that kind of gives you with it?
I would just, when I was working for a publisher and I was just knocking stuff out and getting stuff done, it was just, it was just so crazy. I didn't have an online store or nothing. And then my wife, she was, we were just dating at the time, and then she moved in with me and all this other stuff. And then she's like, how come you don't have a store? And I'm like, I don't have time. And then she's like, I could build a store. And I'm like, all right. And then she built the store. And then the store started doing really good. And then she's like, when I made Sad Girl Psycho Baby, she's like, she's just like, let's just keep making these characters. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So it just became an imprint, you know what I mean? Like, we're big fans of the Smiths and stuff like that. And so that's what Still Ill is. Still Ill is a song by the Smiths. So, and we are originally Still Ill Princess. That's why our logo represents a mentally ill Disney princess. So it's a princess with a straitjacket, and then that's our logo. And then it evolved into dropping the princess part and just call it Still Ill Comics, because that way when someone sees it for the first time, they know it's comic books. They don't instead of saying I don't know what this is. But yeah, it just became its own imprint, man. Just from just working and developing more and more characters and more stories, I'm just like, this is just my own imprint. And then we just kept going. We just went from there, so.
Yeah, I admire that. Kind of, when since I developed my own imprint and turned to Policy City Comics from a podcast into its own publishing house, I really did feel like, at this point, it's almost like something that indie creators need to kind of get a better feel for, is discovering the value in their creations and art and giving it kind of its own universe and ability to breathe. I've seen so many chase bigger imprints and publishing houses, and as awesome and beneficial as that is for certain books and projects, I mean, I love the aspect of that punk rock, I'm going to get up and do it my own way. And I feel like that's kind of where you father into all that, especially being such an Image fan. I'm sure that was a big inspiration for you to break free from everything as well.
Yeah, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, as far as high school and collecting comics, man, it was, I have been a big fan of Silver Surfer for a long time. I have a huge collection of Silver Surfer books, the whole Ron Lim run from the 80s and 90s.
Ah, nice.
Or before Infinity Gauntlet, all that stuff. Once it became all these crossovers, I'm just a kid. I only have so much money, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't buy all these books. But before all that, all the Silver Surfer stuff, I really like. But once we started getting into it, pre-Image with Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Wilson and all those guys and Eric Larson, and they were the first people that were artists where you knew what they looked like. Before that, comic book artists were just comic book artists, and you go to these little hotel shows and you're you want to go get an autograph from an artist, but you never even know who it is, and then Wizard Magazine and all that was coming along and stuff, and Rob Liefeld was really the face of that pre-Image, because it was just he basically started publicizing his face. His face became, what was just as important as the artwork and the comic books, where it was, and he just showed up on a Levi's jean commercial one day. Yes. And I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? I remember being a kid and seeing that, because growing up with Rob Liefeld and stuff like that, and McFarlane and all that stuff. And then you see Jim Lee, who has crazy anatomy skills, and it's just amazing. And then you got Rob Liefeld, whose stuff is abstract and kind of weird and wonky, but it still had energy to it. So you kind of at first you're like, oh, his anatomy is awful, you know what I mean? But at the same time, he knew how to lay out a page and all that stuff. And but so when you see that Levi's jeans commercial and Rob Liefeld's in it, and you're just like, what the dude, why him? You know what I mean? So it's just, you know what I mean? I'm just he doesn't even draw that good, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter because his face became capital, he was selling himself, and people recognized him at shows, and people started recognizing McFarlane, and Jim Lee started coming into the thing. And then when they just left, and after they became these rock stars that everybody knew their faces, they just left and formed Image. And seeing that in Wizard Magazine and them talking about it, and there was these VHS tapes with Stan Lee hosting. Yeah, it was called Visits with the Comic Book Greats. Yeah, and those were amazing, man. It'd be an interview with McFarlane, and then interview with Will Spertasio. It was just all these different tapes, and they would just start hinting at Image Comics, man. And I was just like, dude, there's this buildup going on, because people already started reading about it in Wizard. And then all of a sudden there was this, they did one videotape where it was Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, McFarlane, and Will Spertasio.
Yep.
they started like talking about layout and doing art and stuff like that. And then there was like an after the credits thing where they went to, I think, Homage Studios or whatever.
Mhm.
And it was like this whole setup. And I was just like, what the heck, man? This is just some guys that formed a studio, and like, and then, Jim Lee takes you to his office and you start seeing all these Wildcat pages and all this stuff. I'm just like, man, this is crazy, dude. Yeah. So growing up with that, it made me stop thinking that one day I wanted to work for Marvel. You know what I mean? I started because I always like making my own characters. I still, even today, I have file cabinets of all these characters that I've never used. I brought a couple back here and there through the years, but yeah, like just I've always enjoyed just making my own characters, and then to think that I was gonna work for Marvel and stuff one day, that probably wouldn't have been my true happiness. You know what I mean? And then seeing these guys branch off and just doing their own characters and doing their own stories, I'm like, that's it, man. That's what I want to do. So,
Dude, yeah, I think that resonates with all of us so much. You kind of hit like, depending on how your angle came with comics and what inspired you, like you kind of hit a wall with like the big publishers, and it just seems like it's so almost impossible to get up into that like wall at a certain point, and you could keep on jumping, and it just kind of feels like you're not good enough at a certain point. And I mean, people bash on Rob Liefeld. I've bashed on Rob Liefeld before, you know what I mean? I'm just, who hasn't? But it's like one of those things too where it's like, he is like a key player in independent comics. And when you think about independent comics and indie comics, you think about different artwork and different art styles, and the quality can like differ from different levels. And it's really the eye of the beholder at that point when it comes to indie books. There's no house style like they do with Marvel and DC, where we have our Jim Lees and Tony Daniels and stuff like that, like Jason Faa books. So when you look at Rob and what him and like Todd were doing, they were redefining how comics looked and giving independent artists like a bigger voice again, because I feel like it faded there after like the Mad Magazine Crumb era, and heavy metal kept it afloat for a little bit, but it wasn't until Image came and just like punched it through the roof that like indie comics became prominent in the mainstream world. And it's wild to even imagine any of us getting to that level of independence at that point.
And just an FYI, young teenager going to a small show in Orange County, California, to meet Rob Liefeld, and he had just did What If X-Men Was an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I go to buy the book from him, and I'm just a young kid that I just want to break into comic books. I'm always asking questions from creators and artists, and he blew me off, and he was a total dick.
Oh,
but you know what I mean? It was to the point where, I don't care anymore. But I remember at the time I was just like, what the, you know what I mean? And then I remember doing a show later on in Orange County, and Zombie Tramp was big, and it was like this small little one-day show, and they had different rooms, and there was like a room where like the people that were more popular were in that room. And so I'm in this room, and the table right across from me, I see a big tag that says Rob Liefeld, and then they're seating me down and stuff. And then they were really cool, like the people that ran the show. And I go, hey, I go, can you move me to that wall? And they're like, why? And I go, I don't want to look at Liefeld all day. And then they're like, yeah, no problem. So they moved me, and they were cool about it. It's just, but Liefeld was cool that whole day. He was buying people drinks, like that. But I don't want to look at him and just remember that time he was a dick to me, But
exactly, dude. That's oh man, what a thing, And I've heard stories like that. I had a friend try to get, he was really excited. He got like passed down a copy of New Mutants '98, first Deadpool. Nice. His dad gave it to him. He went to Rob to get it signed. He was just really excited, getting one of his first conventions, super hyped up. And then Rob was like, he was signing for free, just everything. Wow. But then he was going to charge like $5, $10 a signature, and that's something decent. But then he was going to charge like $90 to $100 to sign that book because of the value that book has. And the kid was like, I don't have that. And he was like, sorry, I'm not going to touch it then. And it was just like move along type of thing. And I was like, damn, dude, I don't know. And that's cold, at a certain point. But it's when it turns into a business model, that's a whole nother aspect too. And even for you, how is that like bouncing from like your, just starting off putting out a couple books to like literally turning into like your own business where you're, self-sustaining yourself at that point?
Yeah, it's become a thing, man. We just keep thinking of what's the next thing we can do. What's the next thing we can do? But next year we're gonna have our first Still Ill comic book convention.
Oh, sick.
So yeah, so we got the venue, and we're booking all the guest artists and stuff that we want and stuff. But it's called IllCon, and it's basically all the guests that we have are going to be people that have done covers for us or written stories for us, things like that. And we're getting some pretty big names that we can't announce yet, but it's just like we're getting names that Motor City Comic Con doesn't get. So
cool.
I thought that was kind of cool. And it's not to like say in your face Motor City or anything, but yeah, it's just I ever since we've moved to Michigan, we're kind of like these shows aren't that great. So it's kind of like I wanted to do I was like, let's just do our own show. And I was just like, I don't want to. And then my wife's like, we could do it. I'm pretty sure that it would be a good show. And I was like, And then we were at some place looking at venues for her other business, and this venue was so nice. And I was just like, all right, let's talk about contracts on this place, and let's see if we can book this date. Cause I was like, I want to do it next year, and I want to do it on Free Comic Book Day.
Oh, wow.
And I got the date, and I was just like, all right, let's see if I can get guests. And everybody I asked right away, they're like, yeah. And I was like, what the heck, dude? This is awesome. So yeah, so it's still in early development, but definitely that's our next move, is to try to have our own show. So that's going to happen May next year. And that's just crazy, man.
So what do you think is like missing from cons right now that you want to just make better for your own convention? Like, what was your point where, like, even with comics, you're like, what, I'm going to do this myself. Yeah. And just like with the convention, you're like, what, I'm going to do it myself. And publishing, like what was your breaking point? What's built up, at shows?
The thing about shows now is it depends on who owns them, like, cause I used to do lots of shows. I used to do like 12 shows a year or something. Mm-hmm. And now I like last year I didn't do any shows. I'm like, I'm not going to do any shows. I'm just going to get projects done. And then so this year I'm like, I'm going to do 4 shows. So Fan Expo shows are pretty cool, and I like doing C2E2 because that's living in Michigan. That's the closest show that's really, I mean, it's only a 4-hour drive. So that's next weekend that we're going to do that show. So there's some shows that are just really good, and then there's just some that are just they're not in touch. They're just out of touch. It's just they're just a celebrity autograph billion, basically. It's just, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of like they're out of touch with the artists. They don't care about the artists. They just care about the celebrities that play the part of the character that artist. You know what I mean? But
honestly, yeah.
And it's fucked up, man. And that's how Wizard World used to be before they got bought out. But they started turning into that, where it's just a celebrity fest, man. It's just like, hey, remember me? I was in a movie. Give me $50 for an autograph, And it's just, I don't. And there's shows out here that I've applied for, and I don't get in. So wow. I'm just like, I'm not going to bother trying to get in anymore. I'm just going to make my own show.
Yeah, makes sense.
This show's going to sell out. So
yeah, and you have the fan base, you have the people behind it, and working in what you've been doing and the niche you work for, and like the independent, community you've built up at the same time, the respect you have from independent creators, and how long you've maintained that too. That's another thing, is that like, eventually a lot of indie creators get to a certain point where they're like, I am going to start doing these covers for Marvel and DC and, do this and that to like build up stuff. But you've been very just like your brand, your label, like just you. And I love that. That's super respectful.
I'll do covers like, as time goes on, I just don't have time to do covers for anybody. Every time I have to do a cover for someone, I lose like 3 days of work that I could be doing my own stuff. I do still do covers for Coffin Comics. That's like the only people that I do covers for, because Brian Polito, Lady Death, Indie Backer, 1990s. The epitome of 90s bad girl comics, man.
Straight up, yeah.
You know what I mean? He's been he's been my Willy Wonka throughout a lot of this, where he basically showed me how to make chocolate. You know what I mean? It's just like,
that's rad.
you know what I mean? Because he started, you know, he was doing his Kickstarters and he was doing really well, and he started talking to me about stuff once I started doing covers for him, and I became like this person on his radar. You know, he was just always there to lend like his knowledge of, you know, he's been in the business for 30 years, so he's very mentoring, and his whole facility is amazing out in Arizona. But yeah, just watching how they would do fulfillment. They even did our fulfillment for a couple of years to help us get started. And then I just kind of just study them and watch how they pack and watch their quality inspections and watch how they do everything. And then when we moved out here to Michigan, we had the room to make our own fulfillment facility. And I just took all the cues that Coffin Comix did and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm probably talking on a tangent now, but
No,
yeah.
dude, that's awesome. Because like, one, Brian's a great dude. I've met him before. I think maybe the same year I met you. And dude, like, I remember seeing Lady Death in like Wizard magazine as a kid, and it's like that was like the time I realized there was like sex in comics, and like I thought it was just like the coolest thing in the world. Because at that point in my life, like whenever I saw like anything like that, and I was like in elementary school, my dad was like, "It's rock and roll." And then so like in my brain, I was just always like, it's rock and roll. You know what I mean? I'm seeing rock and roll in comics more, you know? So just like my brain immediately was like even more attracted to that stuff. But he's a great dude. And like he's, again, revolutionized, you know, independent books in a big way, and sustaining his own stuff and like creating that brand, and very recognizable, just like yours. Like you guys stand out amongst a lot of these people.
And we've gone through our own, we've gone through our own like this, like parallel kind of tribulations of things, where with lawsuits and losing characters and fighting to get characters back and things like that. So he's always helpful with that stuff, because we've, you know what I mean? It's like a kismet thing, you know, with us. You know, and growing up, I met Polito a couple times in my career. You know what I mean? Where, you know, especially when I started Zombie Tramp, I asked him a couple times if he would be interested in a crossover, and he doesn't even know who I am. He doesn't care. He's like, no, you know what I mean? But it's just, as we developed with this friendship and everything like that, and he could see the success that we're brewing out of Still Comics, and he was just like, you know, after I got the rights back to Lady Death, after I got the rights back to Zombie Tramp, he called me. And then he's like, hey, I talked to you about something. I'm like, what? So he calls me and he's like, you still want to do that crossover? And I was like, yeah. So that's what we did last year, man. We did the Kickstarter campaign for the Lady Death versus Zombie Tramp. And it's just so cool, man. Like a character around for 30 years that I kind of grew up on. And then my character that's been around for about 15 years. And then I got to write and draw like this whole like 64 page like battle, you know, which was really fun, you know.
I mean, look at the contrast there from like hero to hero. You know what I mean? Not to call anyone out here, you know, essentially, but like Rob Liefeld versus Brian, you know what I mean? Talk about like someone who just took you in, and like someone you looked up to, and you got to meet, and you got to like meet a few times around the same age and everything, and what that impact did to you. And that just shows what like meeting someone does. So like even like I'm sure people look up to you, and that when they meet you for the first time, I mean, I had a great impression by you from when I remembered you for that, you know, quick signature and everything, and like got to talk to you for a moment. So I knew this interview was gonna be like, all right, I got nothing to worry about. I know Dan's a cool, good, nice guy. And that's fun. That's great to know, to like, you know, people are like this, and it doesn't matter the level. A lot of it doesn't get to our heads. A lot of us are very just, you know, we're trying our best, and we're just trying to make leaps and bounds and be successful. And that's where you're at.
And even like when I was younger, and I would ask Polito for crossovers or whatever, and he doesn't know I am, and he says no and stuff. He was never like a prick, you know what I mean? He would just, oh, I'm sorry, not interested, whatever, you know what I mean? And it's there's a story that, you know, Fluffy, the comedian, Gabriel Iglesias, he talks about the story that of when he got to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. I follow his rules of success, all the things, you know, whatever. But he talks about the day he got to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the day he got to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, he saw him at like a party or something, and then he was like, oh my gosh, and they like, you want to meet him? He's like, yeah. So then they had people line up to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger would walk up to each one, and he would do a whole spiel. He would be like, oh, how you doing? And then he'd shake their hands. Oh, you got a strong grip, and blah, blah, blah. And he would give them the whole spiel. And then he would walk to the next person and give them the exact same spiel and the exact same one. And Gabriel's like, man, he's doing the exact same thing to everybody. And he thought that was kind of cheesy, but he realized that walking away, Arnold Schwarzenegger gave every individual person the Arnold Schwarzenegger experience. And so I kind of like, when I'm at shows, I'm no Arnold Schwarzenegger by any means, but like when I'm at shows, I try not to be in a bad mood. I don't complain about stuff. When someone comes to see me, I try to give them a good experience. I just try to be genuine and not a prick. And you know what I mean? I don't want to be a Rob Liefeld. You know what I mean? It's just, I just try to be cool, you know, just try to be humble and, you know what I mean? I just down to earth and stuff. Cause I'm just really easygoing. So I just try to keep my ego at the door. Cause you know, everybody gets kind of full of themselves once in a while, but yeah. You know,
I mean, a little ego is not bad every so while to keep yourself afloat too. You know what I mean?
Big time.
Recognize where you've been and what you've done, and like, you know, even dude, everything you've done is like massive. The fact that you've been this like sustained for so long is massive. You know what I mean? But it's good. It's like you have that ego being like, you know, I put the hours in, I put the work in, you know, and you know, if someone comes up and you know it spends money on your work and like gives you or your art or anything or your attention, it's like you're really grateful for that. Like,
yeah, that used to be my energizing. That was my energizing thing when I first started. You know, when I was with the publisher and Zombie Trample was a monthly series and things like that, and I was always head down, just getting work done. And then to go to a convention, and I'd be exhausted all the time, but to go to a convention and then see all these people come to get my signature and to see books, like there's books that I've never seen, you know what I mean, in real life, you know, but I remember drawing it, you know, and then just to see these books and people bring them and people tell me that they like my work and stuff. I would wake up and be like, man, like I'm actually doing something, you know what I mean? Cause you don't know until you go out into the world and to see how people feel about you. You know, so that's the importance with conventions. You know, so I'm always gonna try to do a few conventions here and there, but you know, as my work gets busier and busier, I have to do less of that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what you mean about conventions too, because like even, you know, I've tabled a handful of times over the year. I've put out, you know, the punk anthology that I did.
Nice.
And it's one of those things where I was like, you know, the separation between like who's over there and where we're at, like all the artist alley indie people are just like shoved into this tight little corner or like laced into the yard, you know, where there's like no vendors or, you know, they want people to wander over there, but no one's wandering over there at all. And I don't like how we're just like, I don't know, just so separated from other artists and creators. Like we too have put in the hours and the time and, you know, deserve the same level of respect at a convention that's meant for all of us, you know, like we shouldn't be all just like, oh, you're bigger than them over there. You're with the good people. Like it's just like a club that you can't get into, you know?
Yeah, it's high school shit. It's a bunch of high school shit.
Dude, yeah, honestly, that's what they feel like.
Shit, you know, like we thought about putting money into, you know, because you know we've been slowly soliciting through Diamond again and putting out books and stuff like that, and you know, so we're official, real fucking publishers, and you know what I mean. And I'm like, well, you know, we can put in money. Let's get exhibitor booths now, and just call ourselves publishers. Don't go in as Dan Mendoza. Go in as Still Ill Comics, all that stuff. And that's when they're like, no. And I'm just like, ugh. Wow. You know what I mean? So I'm just so then I'll be like, so then I'm like, how about Dan Mendoza and Artist Alley? And they're like, yeah.
Oh wow.
And you know,
when you're trying to build your brand too, you know what I mean? Like that's who you are still. Like,
yeah, it's lame. So But
you don't hear them doing that with like Jeff Johns and Ghost Machine. They're not like, oh no, not Ghost Machine. We'll do Jeff Johns over here, but not Ghost Machine.
Yeah, so it's lame, and that's another reason to have our own Ilcon, our own comic book show, and the whole show is just artists and writers, man. There's nobody selling, there's no exhibitors, there's no comic book stores selling books. There's nothing. It's just come meet the artists that work at Steel Ill Comics, and we're gonna thank you for coming. There'll be exclusives. We'll sign whatever you got. We'll have some panels. You know what I mean? We'll have food trucks. We'll just let's just keep it like 8 hour show, and it's just going to be fun, and we don't have to worry about all that bullshit that's always at comic book conventions and all the high school shit, man. Everybody's going to be on the in crowd when they come to my show.
Well, that's what was so cool about, I don't know if you heard about it, but Matthew Sardo, who does Monkeys Fighting Robots, he did Indie Creator Con up in Connecticut just early in early March. Fantastic show because it was nothing but indie creators.
Was that the one that Comics Wellspring sponsored?
Yeah, we did a whole sponsorship for them. Yeah, and it was, dude, I even got to go up there and I got to do like some live stuff and talk to everyone and meet them, and it was just, honestly, everybody had a successful time. Everybody sold their books. It was like nothing but positive, like networking and good people, and it was just pure comics, literally. And we're trying to do panels of like putting comics back in Comic-Con, and that's what's missing at all this type of stuff. Nobody's going in there with their wallets being like, oh, I got this much for indie books, but we want to change that. Like, they need to think about that. Like, and
there's a few shows out there, man. I think of one is like Heroes Con, and things like that. I think it's in North Carolina, but it's like there's a few shows out there that are strictly comic book shows. There's no celebrities. There's no other bullshit. It's just comic books, and some of those are really amazing to go to. I forgot what I was gonna say, but anyways.
Well, I think people who like go to those shows and really admire like independent books, those are like the real comic book fans. Like, you're admiring the craft, you're admiring the art, you're admiring the style, the making of a comic book, and the varieties and the flavors it comes in.
I remember. One of the coolest shows that I've done, if anybody that lives in California, Southern California, Latino Comic Expo. Latino Comics Expo is put on. When I first started my career, I met Javier Hernandez, and he's
sick.
And he's a good dude, and he created a comic book called La Muerto that they actually made a movie of back in the day with Wilmer Veron. I can't say his name. The guy that played Fez on the Saturday show. Wilmer Valderrama, I think. But yeah, he's such a good dude, and he started this Latino Comic Expo, and that's what it was. It's just a nice small show, and it's all indie comics, and every single person there is like Hispanic,
that's sick.
Man, it's every single guest. And you get to see all the cool stuff people are working on. And that used to be my favorite show to do when I lived out in Southern California. So, yeah.
I got to tell friends about that. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I grew up there like my whole life. So like, that's my heritage. That's my, I have my white side, my last name, but I'm like half I'm a Wiener Schnitzel. Like I'm mixed. But dude, that's so exciting. I didn't even know about that. I would love to pass that along to like some great friends.
What was cool is that one of the times I did the show because I'm half Mexican. I ran the Kickstarter for Sad Girl. You know what I mean? So we just had flyers, of Sad Girl and her lowrider and all this stuff, and everyone's like, "What is this?" So it was. I would make sure that they went hand in hand, and it was cool. So.
Dude, that's sick. Dude, that foundation that you built is just awesome. And that's cool because all your characters have that kind of variety. You know what I mean? Like, they're all so distinct. They all have a different flavor. So I think like the audience and like demographic you kind of probably unintentionally go for to like widen your audience just grows with characters like that too.
They're all bad girls, but they all have their own kind of personality, and their own kind of, it's kind of weird because, when we started, we just started with Sad Girl in this post-apocalyptic world. Mm-hmm. So every single character is from that world, except for Zombie Tramp. Zombie Tramp's modern world. So it's like, so now it's like I'm at this thing where I'm slowly starting to write Zombie Tramp in to these worlds. So I'm kind of figuring out how I'm gonna put it all together now. So they're all together, but it's just, so we're starting next week is Sugar Pop versus Zombie Tramp, because Sugar Pop used to be our most popular character before we got Zombie Tramp back. So we're doing this 50 something page trade paperbacks one-shot story, and it's introducing Sugar Pop into Zombie Tramp's world. So now Sugar Pop will have a new series, and it'll be in modern times and not in the post-apocalyptic genre. So
dude, love that. I can't wait to catch up on all that too. That's so sick. Man, I love like what you've done in your career, and I love like where you're going and how it's not going to stop. It sounds like, you know, what you have planned, that even with all the characters you haven't even gotten to develop yet, that you would like to develop. What's the hesitation behind that too? I'm curious, like bringing more and like really expanding that universe.
Just time is the big factor. You know, there's only so many hours in the day, you know, and I get exhausted. I get up around 6:30 in the morning. I start work around 7:30 or, you know, or something like that. By the time I'm done with emails and other stuff before I start drawing, it's about 9:30 or 10. But around 4:00, that's it. I don't have energy no more. So so as soon as I wake up, there's a race against the clock. Like, how much can I get done before my old body taps out?
Before you were just racing against time in general and life, and now you're racing against your body, like the drive and never gone away. Like,
yes. And then so you know, around 3:00, it was, everybody's wondering what's for dinner. I'm like, oh man, time's running out. I got time's running out, man. But we got a character that's probably going to debut next year, and it's our 5th leading lady, and it's a girl named Maggie Mintz, and she's a Dalahan, which is a headless person, and it's going traditional black and gray, like Zombie Tramp was. So this book is black, gray, and orange, and it's paying tribute to all the Japanese manga out there where the titles are really long and stuff. So it's called I Beat Things with My Face, and it says tales of the headless barista that just wanted a normal life, and that's what it's about. It's about this Dalahan that's just a barista, and she gets caught up in a bunch of shit where these monster hunters find out about her, and they try to kill her. And then so she one of her ancestors gets assigned to be her protector, and with his you know, he's like a ghostly apparition, so like, you know, with his help, you know, she goes into warrior mode to start hunting the people that were hunting her and stuff like that. But yeah, it's fun, and it's I've been working on it slowly for 3 years, just one issue, because it's just something I do in my spare time, because I have a Patreon page, which is, you know what Patreon is? Okay, so so I have, you know, a certain amount of subscribers and stuff, and the special thing about the Patreon was, like, I said, hey, I'm going to create this book, and it's called I Beat Things with My Face. And then so I'd be working on the character designs. I'm like, what do you guys think about this for the hair? And then people would vote. What do you guys think about this for the clothes? People would vote. And then I start working on story, and then I start, you know, every week we do live drawing sessions, and they see where I'm at. But I'm like, this year I'm going to finish the book, because I only got 4 pages left, and then it's done. So, so every quarter, people that get physical rewards, they get a book sent to them that is available anywhere. So this year, all 4 quarters are 4 new covers of I Beat Things with My Face, and so they're the only people on my Patreon are going to get the first print of this book. So we're not introducing this book to the public for another year. So
that's rad.
When we do introduce it to the public, it's going to be a second printing, and we'll never reintroduce those covers.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, talk about brilliant marketing too, you know what I mean? And utilizing your Patreon, something I need to do way more, to be honest, for Apollo. I mean,
Patreon doesn't make it easy, man.
No, yeah, I know. You have to like work for it. But I mean,
they got the quarterly, like when there's a way, like, I do quarterly rewards, and they make it so hard to export. Like I just want, all right, who paid January, February, March? I just want to take that and have it in an Excel sheet, but it doesn't always work. There's always people like, I didn't get my stuff. And I'm like, they're not on the Excel sheet. So then I look up their subscription and I'm like, you're right there. I don't know why you weren't on the Excel sheet. So it's just, I thank everybody for their patience on Patreon.
I mean, it's such a good way to connect with the community directly too. You know what I mean? And like, even with those hiccups, it's like probably a lot easier to connect and fix it than it would be, you know, if you're running something through Instagram and through your store and stuff like that. So it's like, I really do like having that platform for helping artists in some way. You know what I mean? Just getting a little back in. But what a treat too. I love like hearing the way people really utilize it to like make it worthwhile for their fans, because you definitely are a creator that's cared about the fans that have gotten you where you are. And it sounds like you reward them really well for that too.
Yeah, I try. So
well, dude, this has been an awesome hour of just like, I mean, just hanging out with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a cool, insightful way to know more about like your history, how like the direction indie comics can go, your understanding and how it's influenced you and kind of set you up on like your own stage and being self-sufficient, like a total dream for so many people and so many creators, and like how it could have gone different ways and how you could have been discouraged many ways but pulled through. You're kicking ass, and I'm excited so much for this convention next year that is very much needed. You know, I really think it's like something our community desperately is calling out for, and is, you know, just needs in general, like for our pulse. But why don't you? Oh, what's up?
Oh, you going to Dallas Fan Expo?
No, not Dallas. Maybe if I could get CWS to send me somewhere, we'll find out. You know, we'll see some budgetary things.
I've never done a Texas show aside from horror shows, and this is be my first time at Dallas Fan Expo. So it's going to be so awesome, because whenever we send out our Kickstarter stuff, there's such a huge chunk of books that we send to Texas all the time. So it's going to be fun to see everybody.
Oh, I bet, dude. Yeah, because I mean, I moved out of Texas like 2 years ago. I'm in Virginia now, but I'm always trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like right outside of DC. I'm like in Winchester, like an hour or so away. Cool little spot. But definitely, like I do miss like the connectivity within Texas too. But even then, Dallas was like 10 hours away from El Paso. If I trying to just drive there, ridiculous state, to be honest.
That's what's crazy, man. Like I started teasing the Ilcon and stuff like that, and you know, I was slowly like, you know, during my Patreon show, I'm like, hey, if I did my own show, would you guys go? You know, and they know I live in Michigan, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, this sounds like people would go. And there's like people that never, I have fans that never fly. They don't like to, like they don't like, it's nerve-wracking to them, but they said they would fly for that. You know,
it's an experience, dude. Like, I mean, Grant Morrison did that Morrison Con that once or something, and I'm sure people went wild for that. It's a artist exclusive like convention, and sometimes you never know if it's the first one and only one, or if it's going to continue. But if you're part of that first one too, it's like such a memorable event, and I think people just want to support you and continue seeing you grow in the state you're at too.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I appreciate all my fans, man, and how supportive they are. Like, and they're willing to drive, like you said, like 10 hours to a show, or, you know, I mean, just for a 1-day event, you know. But yeah, it's cool, man.
That's sick. Well, you know, there's a lot more to talk to, maybe even off screen about some of that too. So we'll definitely chat. But for now, dude, we're actually going to be starting up a live drawing show. So maybe I could get your name on that too and do some fun stuff. I'll be announcing that in the next month in May too. I think we can, it's something that we're doing to like, I'm learning how to draw. I've been slowly learning over the past few years, and we have some amazing creators that were coming on to like co-host and hang out, and it'd be a blast to see, because you do mostly digital work.
I'm pure digital. I'm pure digital now. Yeah, man, 8 years ago, I think 8, maybe 9 years ago, I bought my first Cintiq, which is this big thing right here.
Yeah.
And that was it. I bought it and I plugged it in, and I've had it ever since, you know, and I just stopped. I draw on paper, like at shows, or like someone gets like a sketch on a Kickstarter, but it's kind of like just having to go sit at that desk over there that just has a bunch of headphones and other stuff on it, like to sit there and take out a piece of paper and draw. man, it's hard to get started on that now. And I can't
bet.
zoom in. I can't zoom in on stuff.
It's like all my tools. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a different mind setting for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I got my glasses and I'm like, I can't see what I'm drawing still because I can't draw that small anymore and stuff. That's when I'm at shows, I tell people, I go, when they want to get a commission, I'm like, I can only do from waist up because I can't draw small anymore. And then they're like, okay, because otherwise they want some epic thing, you know, like recreate, like Thor number 128 or whatever. I don't know, it's just
Oh man, dude, that'll be fun. Yeah, we'll definitely see what we can line up there. There's a lot to be learned on a show like that, so I'm super excited to get that started.
And you never stop. You never stop learning to draw, man. It's constant, man. I'm constantly learning. Right now, I'm trying to learn how to draw hair better. That's
rad.
Yeah, so
that's the fun thing about like what we do is that it's never ending. You know what I mean? There's always something. You can never say you're bored with art. You know what I mean? There's always something you could be working towards and doing. And that's what makes it so exciting at the same point. Because I think that fear of us sitting down and like the unknown white page or screen, you're just like, how am I going to make this happen? But that feeling once you do, dude, there's no better feeling,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, dude, I've had a blast this hour, man. So much fun, so much insight, so much inspiration. Yeah, dude, I really can't thank you enough for your time, and what you do. And I'm so glad that you print with Comix Wellspring, which is just the coolest thing, and it blew my mind getting you on this list to have you talk to. So thank you. It really means a lot to me as well as a fan. But why don't you tell us what you're up to for the rest of 2024 and where to find your work and the rest of your.
Art of Dan Mendoza on Instagram or Twitter, and Still Ill Comics on Facebook, and also Facebook, just the Dan Mendoza page. Our online store, stillillcomics.com. This year, as far as conventions list left, next week is C2E2 in Chicago. In June is Dallas Fan Expo. And then we're going to do Fan Expo Canada, which is in Toronto, Canada. And I think that probably might be about it for the year. But during C2E2 on the Friday of C2E2, we're launching our Sugar Pop versus Zombie Tramp campaign. And then in I think July is our last Cannibal Kitty origin book. It was a 6-parter origin book. So the very last issue is going to Kickstarter, and I'm drawing the interiors on that right now. And then the end of the year, October, we're doing the Kickstarter campaign for the Zombie Tramp action figure. And and
that's sick. I remember seeing images for that. Yeah,
people are hyped on that one, so that's gonna be fun.
Dude, how cool. I'm hyped for that. I'm probably in the back of that, to be honest.
That's everybody's like, I gotta get 2, because you went out of the box and went in the box. Yep.
Yeah, dude. Man, I mean, it's kind of like when Todd did the Spawn figure, like on Kickstarter. That dude, dude, so cool. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna succumb to something like that for sure. Yeah. My girlfriend will be annoyed that there's another figure around the house, but hey, what do you know?
Look at my office, man. There's figures everywhere, dude. Like. I can't stop.
Dude, and that was something when I started collecting. I was like, just comics take up enough space. It's in a box. These it's contained. I'm not going to touch toys. I'm not going to touch figures. And then you see 1 or 2 cool ones, you're like, that's going to be it. And then like 4 years later, and you're just like, I fucked up. I really like.
I get the only books I buy now are people's Kickstarters, man. So like I'll back a Kickstarter and the book comes in the mail, and then but I go through it. I usually, with lots of Kickstarters, you get the digital copy also. So I just read the digital at my desk, and I get the book, and I look at the quality, and then it just goes into a short box. Like
there you go. I feel you there. I check it out at least a couple times, especially before an interview, and I'll hang one up, and then I'm like, all right, cool. Well, that's about it. Yeah, my books are like the only ones I get to check out and hold. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh man. Well, Dan, thank you so much, dude. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Such a good time. And for everyone else, all of our watchers and listeners, thank you. And if you know what, if you are running a crowdfunding campaign, don't forget to tag CWS on social media so I could repost, so I could share it on our stories. Show us the quality of the book that you got once you get it in the mail. Do a collaboration post. I'll share that as well. Anything you guys need, we are here to help you and help those Kickstarters do even better, as you know, as so that you could print more books, so you could have your awesome stuff at conventions. That's what we want for y'all. But don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, let us know who else you want to be on the show. And then we're going to be opening up a form very soon to start reaching out to more creators to bring on as well. So a lot of cool, exciting stuff, a lot more announcements about the status of CWS and what we've been doing and changing. I know there's been so much happening. So we thank you all for your guys' patience on what we're transitioning towards and working towards every single day. But that's it for today's show. And don't forget, stay creative, stay inspired, and thanks for hanging.
Yeah, see you guys later.
Looking for high quality printing, fast turnaround, and the industry's best customer service? Look no further than Comix Wellspring. Trusted by thousands of indie comic creators, Comix Wellspring is proven to be the go-to comic book printer. So when you're ready to bring your comic books to life, go to comicswellspring.com and be sure to check out one of the best platforms to sell your physical and digital comics online, the CWS Bookstore. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell to see our lives come out twice every single week on YouTube and podcast platforms. And also tag us when you share your favorite episodes and moments from the show. And remember, creators, thanks for hanging, keep creating, and stay inspired.